This was the first attempt by our new French allies to cooperate in direct military operations. The American and French forces combined numbered about 16,000 troops. The British had fewer than 6,000, although they were well dug in. Saratoga and the capture of Burgoyne's army happened less than a year before this battle, in September, October 1777 in upstate New York. What would have happened if a second British army in less than a year had surrendered to the American efforts? We'll never know because it didn't happen. The assault, the grand assault, didn't happen, but you can model it by playing the game because we know what the forces were, how they were deployed more or less, and we can try to wrap our arms around what that might have looked like. But I submit that it had the potential perhaps to shorten the war and to shorten it dramatically. Real quick, a couple of housekeeping notes. You've already heard from the local experts, and when I'm done talking in about 30 minutes, they'll be happy to give you a more granular look at the fort itself. But then I've got this little whistle in my pocket, and I'm going to be watching the clock. Well, anyway, it's a whistle in my pocket. And I'm going to be watching the clock, and we are going to need to leave here because there's a number of automobiles represented in this group. We're going to need to caravan. It's about 12, 15 minutes over at Turkey Hill. We'll have to park. We'll have to walk to that spot and finish up the talk over there. So we'll give you as much time as possible here, and then we will have to skedaddle. Why would the British want to come here? What is it about Newport that made it an objective for them?
It was a deep water port.
Deep water port, ice-free, for the most part. I mean, you may get the occasional ice, but this is an ice-free deep water port, and that was very important. Anything else about it?
The calamari appetizer.
Lobster. Well, Harold cleaned out all the lobster in Newport.
Am I allowed to answer questions?
Yeah, you can, sure.
It was a national defense.
Sure, it was defensible. It was the fourth largest city in colonial America at the time, and as a result of that, it had adequate quarters for the occupying army. That's important, especially in the winter. It commands the entrance to Long Island Sound and the back entrance into New York, through Hell's Gate and all that. And they could, of course, patrol the entire New England coast from here and interdict shipping and commerce. They could also bottle up the privateers trying to come down from Bristol and Warren and Portsmouth. So it was a plum target, and they made a big commitment. And they waited until New York fell, but then on December the 8th, 1776, they sent 7,100 British and Hessian regulars here. They sent quite a command group. Lieutenant General Clinton was here. Lieutenant General Lord Percy was here. In fact, Percy was left in command after Clinton departed. Also, Major General Prescott. Prescott's an interesting story because he eventually replaced Percy as commander, and he had a forward headquarters at the Overring House on the East Road. Well, that would be about 3 miles from here, or maybe 4 miles down the East Road. And by being there, he was able to sort of be centered up with his headquarters and could monitor goings-on both in Newport and up here at the northern end of the island. He was captured at night in his bedclothes by a raiding party, and he was incarcerated for 9 months, later exchanged for American Major General Charles Lee, who you'll remember was captured in the retreat of the American Army across New Jersey, heading to the Delaware River. Prescott returns to Newport in time for the battle, and he's the second in command here when he shows back up, because in the meantime, of course, the British put a new commandant here, Pigot, or Piggott. How do you say it, Paul?
Piggott.
Piggott? Tomato. Anyway, that guy. He was in charge by then. And Brigadier General Francis Smith was here. He led the British out of Boston on the road to Lexington and Concord. So that's a name that recurs in the story. The Hessians were led by Friedrich Wilhelm von Lossberg, several Hessian regiments here. And I'm going to mention Commodore Peter Parker. This is a little bias on my part because I spent 18 years living in Charleston, and it was Commodore Parker who commanded the British squadron in June of 1776, before the Declaration of Independence. They attempted to attack and capture Charleston, and they had to first reduce Fort Sullivan on Sullivan's Island. It's now called Fort Moultrie if you ever visit down that way. Well, they were repulsed, and his flagship, the Experiment, was badly damaged. It was kind of a disgraceful thing from the British point of view, which led an American wit to write the following. This is as if Parker was reporting to his superiors after being repulsed at Sullivan's Island. "Devil take 'em, their shot came so swift and so hot, and the cowardly dogs stood so stiff, sirs, that I put ship about and was glad to get out, or they would have left me not a skiff, sirs. Now, bold as a Turk, I proceed to New York, where with Clinton and Howe you may find me. I've the wind in my tail, and am hoisting sail to leave Sullivan's Island behind me." So that's Admiral Parker, or Commodore rather, Peter Parker, and he was commanding the British squadron here. Well, when this community fell to the British, all of New England was outraged, as you can well imagine. There was a hue and a cry about it. John Adams wrote, "The honor of New England is concerned. If they are not crushed, I will never again glory in being a New England man." So an effort was made. About 5,000 militia were pledged by the New England states, New Hampshire and Connecticut, Massachusetts, and whatnot. 5,000 were pledged. Fewer than 5,000 showed up. Those who showed up had a dearth of equipment. No tents, no flints, no shoes, no boats. They were gathering at Tiverton, which is over there on the mainland side, and they didn't have enough boats to cross over. So that amounted to not too much. They asked General Washington for some help. He couldn't send any Continentals, but he sent Major General Joseph Spencer. And if you have volume 10 in the series, The Battle of White Plains, you'll come across General Spencer in the American countermix there at White Plains. And the heroic Benedict Arnold was also dispatched here. But it came to nothing, and it was canceled in the end. There was a period of small war, petty gear, for a few months then. That's when Prescott was captured, that I've already mentioned. And then finally, a second effort was made, known to history as Spencer's Expedition. This time, 8,000 troops were pledged, and for the most part, they showed up. They were supposed to gather by October the 1st. It was October the 16th before everything was ready. The element of surprise was lost. There was another issue with boats. I'm not going to burn the clock by telling you that story, but it's really kind of it's just an example of how, for want of a nail, the shoe was lost. For want of a shoe, the horse was lost. For want of the horse, the rider was lost. For want of the rider, the battle was lost. For want of the battle, the kingdom was lost, right? So small little things have a way of rippling through. The individual who was responsible for coming up with a manifest, a document that would organize the way in which regiments and brigades boarded the flatboats for the assault across, never produced that document, and it was a big mess.